Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
No problem, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, man. It's been too long.
It has been too long.
I feel like it's a good moment to join you on the day that Bernie was in Chicago.
I know.
It's today was a great day, and this is a little Sunday on top, like a little cherry on top of the day.
Dude, for real. And it was genuinely beautiful out. I mean, the sky was blue, the sun was out, temperatures were relatively warm for Chicago at this time of year. So all things considered, life is good.
Dude, that's awesome. That's
awesome. So for the audience, you are a Chicago-based artist and illustrator and amateur screen printer.
Yes. I pride my amateurism on screen printing.
And you're actually currently wearing your own clothing.
Yes, I'm one of those guys.
You rock your own merch.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, like, yeah, you don't wear your merch all the time. And I go, well, it's a thing, it's the imposter syndrome conversation we were having off mic, I guess.
On mic, but
on mic, but
not live yet.
Not live yet. It's that like, oh snap, I'm wearing it. You think that if it makes a conversation piece, how do you explain it? Like, oh, I made this and I'm wearing it. I put my own art up in my own house, like,
yeah.
And then the other half is like, oh wait, if no one says anything about it, oh man, is it not interesting? And so it's a weird dynamic, and I definitely, like, my wife is very much into, like, if you're gonna make it, like, just do it.
At least rock it.
Yeah. So I like forced myself to wear it. I'm like, all right. But then also it's a Champion hoodie, and it's so comfy. It's just like, if there was nothing on this hoodie, I'd still wear it. You'd
still wear it because it's comfy.
Time.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important, and for people who don't know what imposter syndrome is, because I don't know how common that is for the average person, but because I feel like it's an artist thing. Artists definitely know what that means. But basically, imposter syndrome is when you feel like you don't belong, even if you might be a movie star. You might be in movies and thinking like, I don't belong here. And it's just that kind of weird sensation where there's a disconnect between you feeling like a regular person and the perception of what an artist should be. And I think that that's such a weird thing that we all go through as artists, like myself included, where I'm like, do I really belong here? Like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah. It is the bane of my existence, but like, I couldn't do it without it, Yeah. It's like it's a humbling thing that refocuses. I definitely don't think. I think some people maybe have like really, really hard imposter syndrome. Yeah. They're struggling with it. And I definitely have my moments where I struggle, but it's one of those things where, like, you know what? I'm confident in who Marcus, the screen printer, is, but also I'm not so confident that I'm going to make excuses for doing things poorly, Sure. I think that's where it kind of like, it's beneficial to know, like, hey, am I taking all the right precautions to create this thing with intention, Like, I think intention's like that's like always what I think about when I'm creating is, what's the intention? Am I just creating for the lulz? Am I creating for clicks? Or am I creating because I genuinely wanted to draw or screen print this thing?
And how do you find that? Like, how do you find when you're like, I want to make something because of this? Is it inspiration based, or like there's always this like conscious predetermined thought?
It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, I think definitely what I easily like lean into when I'm feeling drained creatively is puns. I just can't help it. I think wordplay, I think punny humor is just the funniest thing in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, I don't know, almost even like hyperboles are funny. Like, it's just like, you know what? I'm going to make a drawing. I think I posted a drawing recently of... what was it? It was something that I was just like, I did a drawing of Chris Cornell like a few months ago. And like, I love Audio Slave. Chris Cornell's cool. Black Hole Sun's a cool song.
Yeah, Soundgarden. Yeah.
Soundgarden's cool, but I'm not like a grunge guy. And I think people know I'm not a grunge guy. So I thought, I was like, you know what? Let me do this drawing of Chris Cornell and see like what happens. And it's like, oh, yeah, is this guy just drawing Chris Cornell? All right, cool. It is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. I just like, I find that kind of stuff fun. Like, I have this notes app. In the notes app, I have like these puns just listed out. And till this day, there's a pun that's like my Moby Dick. It's like my white whale, and I haven't created it in some format. But one day, I'm going to create Uma Thermos. Because I think it's just like the funniest concept of all time. Uma Thermos. Like, just like, no one needs that in life.
You got to make that thermos look like Kill Bill.
Right? Or is it Kill Bill? Is it my super ex-girlfriend?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is it Mia Wallace, you know?
You could kind of go with any one of those characters.
They're all iconic. Maybe like not super ex-girlfriend, but Mia Wallace is iconic because she shows up in the story of Pulp Fiction before you see her. Like the whole Jules when they're busting in the house and he's like, does Marcellus Wallace look like a, to you? And the only person that gets to Mr. Marcellus Wallace is Mrs. Wallace. And I'm like, we're going to meet her later.
Yep.
We're going to meet her later.
And that you do.
And we really... Oh my God. Sorry, totally sidetracked there.
That's what podcasts are for. Podcasts are for sidetrack. I feel like half the time, it doesn't even matter if there's a central theme, because I think what I find is more interesting is the unexpected roads that you go down throughout the conversation and choosing. And I always have to make the decision sometimes where I'm like, all right, do I pursue what that angle was, even though I originally had this other thing? And what I've been finding is, yeah, just go with that. Go with whatever the instinct is like if something is funny or something's interesting, I'm just going to run with it.
Hey, that's what makes your podcast interesting to listen to, honestly, is like it's a genuine like conversation that you're hearing. And I'm over here plugging the podcast. Fan of the podcast.
Thank you.
I think that's what makes it genuinely nice to listen to. And we worked together at one point, so I know that one, your voice is like conversational.
Yeah.
But two, I enjoy that dynamic, and I'm like, yeah, that's how it should. I think and I'm not my wife loves podcasts. Like she sleeps with podcasts, and there'll be podcasts where just people are talking by themselves. I think one podcast about Teen Mom, that's just this woman
just talking about her experiences as a teen mom.
They're talking about the show Teen Mom.
Oh,
I know.
What? What?
Yeah, and then she's like, and she vamps, and she just kind of like loses track. Like, kind of like it sounds like she's like one glass of wine deep, sitting on her porch, just talking about the newest episode. But I don't engage with it, but my wife loves it. But then like I listen to podcasts like Michael Ian Black had this one like How to Be Amazing, where he interviewed people and talked about like I think he talked to Tabby Galveston from Rookie Magazine from Chicago, and that was the first episode I listened to. And Rookie Magazine does not apply to me. I'm not like a tween girl, and that interview was so conversational, and their age gaps are huge. They're from different experiences. And it was so nice and calming. I remember I was listening to it on an Amtrak, and I was like, man, I almost feel bold enough to talk to my neighbor here on the Amtrak. I'm not going to do it, but I feel I have the tools to do it, Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I find that it's really interesting the different kinds of podcasts that exist out there that even I personally subscribe to. Like, I have several podcasts that are very different in theme. The H3 podcast is very different than Chris D'Elia's podcast, which is very different than Joe Rogan's podcast, which is very different than Aubrey Marcus's podcast, very different than, what's his name? Tim Ferriss's podcast. Like, all of those are very different formats. The Bill Burr, Chris D'Elia is kind of like the rambling comedian, you know? And I do find that those are hilarious because of you get to watch a comedian kind of come up with bits on the spot. I find that very funny. And then you have the podcasts like H3 podcast where it's kind of like internet meme culture reacting. Some of those are hit or miss, but I find the most fun episodes are when it's the whole crew is just kind of bullshitting together. But then there are other things like Tim Ferriss's podcast where I'm like, I want this to be a structured interview where he really gets down to some interesting shit, because let's be honest, Tim Ferriss's voice is really boring. So his interview skills are really good.
Yeah.
And he gets really good answers from these really powerful people or really interesting people. And so it's like, I want different things out of different podcasts. So I think for mine, I give you exactly what I want out of my own podcast, and that's what this ends up being. I prefer conversations.
Yeah.
I interview a little bit, but like I'm just trying to keep it productive and constructive. But I'm not like, I don't want this to be like, all right, now here's my other question for you. and then you give an answer. It's like, all right, cool, moving on. Like, no, I want to engage in where that goes and see kind of, what the winding path is.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's awesome. That's where I think like organic podcasts come from. I think I've only recorded outside of the one I did with the sneaker one in my lifetime, in my 30-year-old life, only recorded one other podcast. And it was like an adventure kind of podcast. Like I think I was like doing voice work.
Oh, wow. Like
I never heard the
story?
end. I never heard the end of it. I never heard what it came out as. But it was weird because I remember going in, I recorded my lines, and I was like, oh, I'm recording lines. This isn't even...
It's not even really a podcast.
Yeah, it's a cartoon show without
the visual
video, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was always like, I wonder how this process works. And it's great hearing and seeing setups and seeing how they work out, because it's cool. Because like in LA, there's like a huge market of studios that rent themselves solely to podcasts and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that's a big market.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And like there's audio engineers that's solely what they focus on. And I go, man, you know, some of the best podcasts are done by people that do it all themselves. You don't have to do all of this.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's like, oh, well, in this podcast we make a parody song or something. Okay, yeah, you need to have a studio.
Sure.
But, you know, it's not like, I don't know. It's not like, it feels more genuine like this. It feels,
yeah.
And that's what I want from a podcast. I want genuine, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I want authenticity. That's the whole point of this fucking thing, is I want to get down to the real shit. I want people to hear conversations that maybe their friends don't enable them for, even though they might long for it. So, you know, the idea is that you're a fly on the wall in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
That you're just in the room with us. You're just listening. You can't talk. I'm sorry. There's no way to do it. Like you can't talk. You don't have a place in this conversation. But like I want you to be able to be in it and feel like, all right, cool. Like these are some people I feel like I could know, and I'm learning something interesting about them or their background. Or I also love to get down to the inside baseball of the way that people do things, especially artists. Like I love learning people's process, because there's something that I can learn from that through in my own work, but applied in a different way.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I obsess over the book mastery all the time, because that's kind of the concept, is like, you know, apprenticeship and learning from others and applying various disciplines and bringing them together, or using unique insights from one discipline and applying it in a special way in another one, because it's not always going to be a direct translation. So I want to go back to, because it's related to that, I want to go back to your original talking point about the fact that you have 3 different disciplines that you're kind of in right now, and you thought they'd be related, and that they're not.
Oh yeah.
So I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I tend to focus in illustration, in screen printing, and then a thing that I casted away like a baseball into the nether realms of the universe, which was painting. I'm back to painting, and it's really interesting to me that I thought that, you know, these things are all art making. You know, they're all artistic expressions, but they each have the thing that makes it the thing. You know what I mean? Like screen printing exists because you use this archaic form of printmaking, and you output it on clothing, on posters, on whatever. Painting is, again, an old master form of taking pigment and putting it on a canvas and then creating an image. And then illustration is like always in this battle where it's like considered kitsch, or it's, you know, it's something that's tangible, realistic art. And so I remember I had this huge focus point on 2019 to be like, all right, I'm going to equip myself with what I need to like be an artist and do art, but also be a responsible human being, be a husband, be a coworker, be a son, you know, all those things. And my wife is like super patient. She's like, you can do this. We got a wedding we got to do, but we can do this. And so every step of the way, like, she's helped me set up my studio when we moved into our apartment, setting up, making sure, like, you know, that I was making that space a place where I could create. And then I quickly realized, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to sit in here and I'm going to work. Like, I've been working on this like artwork piece for about 2 years now, where I do micro like life drawings, and I take that life drawing and I finish it, and it has to be ink. It has to be, the only other color I can use is cool gray. I think it's like a Prismacolor, like a plug for Prismacolor.
Shout out Prisma.
And so it's like a cool gray on there. And so I do a live study of whatever. And then on top of that drawing is the word I associate with that life drawing. No explanation. Just it's kind of like very freeform. And it just reminded me of like how much I loved life drawing, and how that was an easy way to break the monotony of like not being able to create something. And it turned into a piece, and it's also on such a small scale, and that's like kind of the funness with working with markers, like marker or ink or any pen. Working small scale is so tough because it takes one pressure too much to just like ink blot out, and you're done. And
then you just fuck the whole thing.
There's no erasing that. You gotta, it's out with the.
Either that or you work with it. You improvise and you turn that mistake into a happy accident.
Yeah, which is not as easy as Bob Ross makes it, let me tell you.
It's not. Well, Bob Ross, because he's not using ink.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, his little happy tree. Yeah, you know what a happy tree doesn't look like? A black blob.
Yeah, that completely just covered your tiny little line work.
So I'm working on that, and I feel really complete with that. And then I go, this is on such a small scale. And then I go to painting, and I switch over to this big canvas, and I start working on it. My arms get tired, and I'm like, this is so fudging big.
Yeah. You can say fuck. It doesn't matter.
I wasn't sure. I was trying to avoid curse words.
No, I curse way too much on it. I'm not even monetized right now. It's all good. You need 1,000 subscribers, which, by the way, please get me there. But you need 1,000 subscribers before you can even apply for monetization. So
okay.
Don't worry. Fuck it.
But hey, you know what? Man, it's so hard for me to say, but fuck it, right? Yeah. But yeah, so you're like looking at this big fucking canvas, and you're just like, all right, I'm gonna work this out, and you gotta let it dry. And the thing I like about acrylic is you can like you can make it malleable. You can add and subtract things to it to make it thicker and viscous and all this cool stuff. But man, if you don't mix that paint the exact same way the next time, you got to learn to work with it, and that's a hard thing for me to do. So then, you leave your painting, you let it dry over, you add the next layer. And then I think, I'm going to go back to this thing. Well, my hand's covered in ink. I don't want to ruin that. And then you're just like, and then all of a sudden, while it's drying, it's like the drying of this time to let this work just insists upon your brain. And it's kind of like dating. It's kind of like you went on a date. It was great. You like each other. It's awesome. And you leave, you go home, and you get in your house, put your pajamas on, you lay in bed. And before you close your eyes, you think, is it too soon to text them? Is it weird to say have a good night? And then all of a sudden you're just like second guessing this thing you're working on, and you're just like, all right, I don't want to come back to this too soon. Then I'm going to give it time. And then sometimes that time ends up like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
And then screen printing's the worst. Screen printing's the worst because I don't have a studio. My first studio I set up when I moved to Chicago was in my old apartment, and we had all this basement space. And I remember I created a dark room out of our storage container, and I pierced 2 screens because I moved my old roommate's ex-girlfriend's bike the wrong way, and it just kind of and it's again, you learn mistake. Punctures through. I'm like, oh damn. And then I don't have the right cleaning, so I would blow through a screen easily, cleaning it out. Mm-hmm. Now in my new apartment, I don't have a dark room. So now I have to find a resource to get the screen shot for me, which is cool. But the thing about doing it in my old space was that it gave it kind of like these grungy tones to it. So you can see spots where it kind of just blows out, Yeah. And that was cool. That was I like the amateur idea of the project. And that's what was the project was going to feed into itself to get more and more sort of refined as I was able to procure the tools to make it finer.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, you're cleaning that, you're washing that out, and you're like, oh man, I could make 100 screens. I could sit on my iPad Pro and I can design it, but what does it mean for a collection of apparel? That's a whole different thought process than, is that paint just the right pigment for me?
Yeah.
Oh, is that blot not in the way? And so those 3 things coincide, and it's kind of like having Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and I'm Donald Duck, and I'm like, you fucking kids.
Yeah.
It's a fucking madhouse.
But it seems like it seems like you're learning a lot though from those mistakes, because you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the things that you've learned in that, you probably haven't made too many of the same mistake over and over and over again. I don't want to speak for you, but...
I definitely blown through less screens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't mean you don't stop blowing through them, but yeah.
Oh, no, for sure. I had this mistake. So, I did a pre-order for a shirt design for Passive Poison on Black Friday. I was feeling, I'd got the Squarespace page up. Squarespace like launched something where you can do like an easier sort of temporary launch in your store. So I was like, you know what, let's go for it. Fuck it. I got to print it, I know I can print it. And so I found a company in Austin that could get the screenshot for me, mail it to Chicago. And so I did the pre-order, I ordered the screens, and that company never got back to me. So I had about 10 pre-orders, and I was like emailing, like, I have to find a place to get the screen made. I didn't get that screen like made and finished like well until like November late November, early December. Fuck. And then I had to like, go get, the sweaters they're being printed on. And it came out nice, but it was very rushed. And then like the champion shirt thickness, like I definitely have 2 or 3 like really bad prints on champion sweaters that like, you just like the thickness of it, the pull. And I don't have, again, this setup that's like I can make every pull the same consistently. So I like literally learned at that point, you know what? No more pre-orders. Done with pre-orders. It's going to be like, here are the screens I have made. I know I could make these. I'm not going to start doing orders till screens are in my house, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, you learn from it. And then there's there's the piece of passive poison that's really weird for me to sort of engage with, is that it's a wearable, and my friends that own it and that I see consistently wear it, and I'm always like, oh my God, I'm so thankful to have friends that would do that. Like, that's so
that rep your merch.
Dope. Yeah. But then the other part of me is like, damn, that registration's a little off. And I'm just like, fuck.
Well, that's the perfectionist, right? Is like, you see your own work and you're going to critique it in a way that nobody else is.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the imposter syndrome too.
It's the imposter. It's that little fucker. It's the imposter syndrome is like a vestigial twin that just like hangs out. And
it's just always
right,
there.
Dude, you suck, but thanks for hanging around and playing the game. Like,
yeah, and I think what you were saying before about it being kind of a humbling experience, to have that. I think there is a point where yes, it is. I think there is a point where it goes too far and it gets in your way.
Yeah.
So it's this weird, delicate balance where you definitely want to make sure you base yourself in reality. You got to ground yourself. You're not God, you're not Yeezy, right? Yeah. Which I was talking with Eric about Kanye earlier, but and how he's no longer a fan of Kanye at all.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm not. He's like, I used to be, but not anymore. But I think like, Kanye is the perfect example of that, like ego gone way too far.
Yeah.
And then you have other people where they're like too self-conscious. I don't even know if I have any good examples of that, of people who are really talented but are really self-conscious, and it ends up getting in the way of their work. They end up not making as good of work because they're so worried about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't want to speak for Logic, but I feel like Logic on some level kind of does that too, where you can tell in some of the latest music where it felt a little rushed. I think he also just put out too much music too quickly. But I felt like there was a drop off a little bit, and I love Logic.
Yeah.
So I say this as a huge fan. I have a signed shirt of his, and I went to his concert when he came here in Chicago a couple of years ago. So, but there's a little bit of fall off, and I think there's a little bit of the online community bullying that definitely happens on Logic page.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he gets a lot of hate online.
Well, does it help that Joe Budden exists?
I know, fuck. Joe Budden went off on him.
But that's the thing, is that especially like Logic, I think, is a perfect example of someone that like will let the imposter syndrome sort of drive the car for a bit, and then it comes back in a kind of shitty way,
Yeah.
Because I think like I'm not the biggest Logic fan, but I think Logic's skill set is undeniable.
Oh, without a doubt.
You know what I mean?
Hence the project Undeniable.
See?
Very punny. You weren't kidding.
I carry puns in my back pocket with my vestigial twin. But I think that's like a very clear understanding of like, he's existing in the space of hip hop. Hip hop is full of bravado. It's full of, the worst part about hip hop is the worst part about hip hop is that everyone wants to define hip hop and what makes a great rap or what makes a good rap or what makes good hip hop. In reality, it's fucking rap music. It's music. you're no better than people who go like classical music is the only good music.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You're just being a contrarian for no reason, and so then you get people like Joe Budden. They get these big fucking platforms, right? He gets to, I love Joe Budden. Like I say this as someone that loves to hear Joe Budden, but also I recognize that Joe Budden is a dude from New Jersey, who grew up around a certain type of hip hop. Man, fuck Joe Budden's opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And then that's like, I think like, but again, I'm not a hip hop artist. I don't have Joe Budden's opinion coming at me with his legion of New Jerseyites. I don't know what New Jersey's people is called.
Me neither.
New Jerseyans?
I don't know.
I think they just call them assholes, but
yeah, I think assholes is probably better.
Right?
Yeah. Sorry for any fans in New Jersey.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
But no,
bypass the poison.
But I think that's like the realistic aspect is like, you know, I don't have some huge following that I have to worry about. It's like, you know, my mom and dad, I guess. Like,
yeah, right.
But you know, Logic here, he has his fan base. Like, he's Minneapolis, right?
No, he's Maryland.
Maryland. Yep. Minneapolis is A$AP Rock, right?
Is it? Well, I thought A$AP Rocky was Harlem.
No, not A$AP Rocky. A$AP Rock.
Oh, A$AP Rock. Oh, okay.
Isn't he like the Minneapolis group?
I honestly don't know where he's from.
I don't know. I'm not the best person with like that level of hip hop.
Yeah.
But I think
the origin stories and shit.
Right. Yeah. That was like the hip hop aspect of things that I've been like, oh, you guys exist. You guys were on a Murs album. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'll know facts about artists that I know something about or that I really care about, where I'm like, oh, I'm interested in that and I want to know their history. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know what I mean.
Yeah. I feel like I grew up enough with like having to hear from like New York, from Texas, and all these other like rap centers. I'm like, I don't care. Minneapolis, you give me the Vikings and move on. Like,
yeah.
But I was like Logic's ability to like kind of take that, and he's open about his mental health, and I think that's something that's really important. Because the thing about hip hop is hip hop will eat itself if it doesn't grow. It's like emotionally stunted. Yeah. And it's taken years for it to get. That's why, like, my sister was like got me into listening to Lil Uzi Vert, and Lil Uzi Vert is this weird sort of existence of hip hop and creativity, but Lil Uzi Vert is not scared to like continue to exist and try something that's deviated from the path. And I think like guys like Logic paved the way for hip hop artists to say, I don't care. You know, and so like Joe Budden's going to be in his fucking echo chamber doing his thing, but guess what Joe Budden's going to be on? He's not going any further than Complex and MTV2. Yeah, he's at his wall.
For sure.
No one's going to be like, you know what, we're doing this movie, we're filming it, we're going to have LeBron James with the cameo, we're going to have we're going to have Dr. Dre with the cameo. Hey, what about Joe Budden? Man, fuck Joe Budden. And like, this is going to move on. Like, is that going to be a thing, you know?
Yeah, no, he's hit his limit, and he couldn't do it in the rap game. You know what's kind of crazy though is he was good with bars. I mean, he had good lyrics.
He's a sick rapper. Yeah. Well, you heard when he did the Everyday Struggle at Complex, he was like, I'm a retired rapper. I'm now a rap criticist. I am a critiquer of rap music. That's why he would say whatever came to his mind. That's why that Migos bit is so funny to me, where like he's mad at the Migos because they're getting all upset when they called him out for being like, one of your dudes is left off your biggest song. Like, how do you feel about that? Why would you ask that question? I look like I was left off Bad and Bougie. And like Joe Budden's like, man, shut the fuck up. Like, this is an interview. This isn't like an ego. And I appreciate that about him. Now, does he overuse that competency? Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, know your audience. Like, know that this artist isn't going to be able to talk objectively about their career. Don't bring them on the show. Yeah. Pick people you know are going to help grow your community. You know?
And I mean, I think that's where Joe Budden definitely lets the ego drive a little bit. But Logic is talented, undeniably, and I think he's dropped some really good projects, and I think he's dropped some not so great projects. But they weren't. No, I don't think anything he's dropped has been like, this is the worst thing of all time. Yeah. But I do think that he's dropped some where it's like, maybe you should have taken a little more time and then released, because they're, you know, on those projects that were maybe not as good, there are still a couple good tracks that are really solid. I'm like, maybe get a few more like that now. And by like, I don't mean literally sonically. I just mean quality. Yeah. You know? But like, I didn't hate Everybody in the way that everybody hated Everybody.
Really?
Everybody was like one of the highest selling of his albums, but seems to be one of the most hated of his albums.
Those are just people in they're like, it's the what is the term? The like, I hate zeitgeist. It's like my least favorite word of all time. But it's that like people go into being like, well, yeah, it's critically acclaimed, but I think it's his lesser work.
Yeah,
it's that that air of pretension that I gotta like prove that.
Oh well, I knew him back before then.
Yeah, like what?
He was so much better before he got success. Yeah,
who are these people? Where the fuck do they come from?
I don't know. And the thing that frustrates me is that album, the concept of it was based on The Egg, which was I think was written by Andy Weir, right, of The Martian. The concept.
Oh, I never read The Martian.
I never read The Martian either, but I read The Egg. And The Egg is basically like a story of a person who meets God and finds out that that person is everybody who's ever lived. It's a really deep story of kind of like, it's like reincarnation, except you and I are actually the same person when you get outside of our physical existence here on the planet, and everybody on the planet is all really the same person, constantly living over and over and over again to learn every lesson it could ever need to know before it reaches the same level as God. Oh. And this God is not really even the only God. It's like, that's kind of the larger concept. And so Neil deGrasse Tyson is God in the skits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, perfect voice for it. And he wanted to get Neil deGrasse Tyson on for The Incredible True Story.
Okay.
But that just didn't work out. I don't know if their schedules just didn't click. So then he brought it back for everybody. And hence the name Everybody, right? I mean, that feeds directly into it. So conceptually, it was great. And sonically, he definitely worked with the most instruments and orchestral. And there's a lot of beautiful things about it. I do think that there are less songs that I want to keep playing over and over and over again on it, but that doesn't take away from the work, in the same way that I have a controversial take on Kendrick's album, To Pimp a Butterfly.
Ooh, caliente takes. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm about to take a hot take on it, where I acknowledge that it is a great album. I don't want to listen to it.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
I totally understand. I don't disagree with that opinion. That is a heavy album. There's a lot of reasons why no one wants to listen to that multiple times.
Yeah, but sonically, it's good. Conceptually, it was amazing. But I listened to it once or twice, like all the way through, and I was like, I think I'm gonna listen to All Right, The Black or the Berry. There's just like a few songs. These Walls I thought was really catchy, but like that was kind of it. That was all I wanted to keep listening to.
Oh yeah.
But I think some albums are just like that, where they're masterpieces, but they're also not necessarily the album you want to keep bumping.
Well, I think that's like I feel like that's like the biggest opportunity in hip hop, and it's so much more for music too. And I mean, I'm not a music industry person. I don't know, but like I can name maybe on my hand 5 only albums that I can listen to all the way through in hip hop.
Yeah,
that's because To Pimp a Butterfly. These Walls, great song. Why are there so many weird ad-lib parts to it?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I don't know.
That song would be perfect on a bump and grind playlist. It would be great. But then there's these weird, like, non sequiturs in it, and you're just like, okay, Kendrick, cool. You proved that you can do 3 voices. Congratulations, you're Frank Welker. Like, I don't know.
You're like, what are you trying to accomplish?
And that's where it misses. That's why when Kanye's like big projects after Ye came out, I was jazzed for them, is because they were micro albums, 5, 6, 7 tracks, if that. And I think that's something like I think about like listening to like a Sugar Loaf album from like the 70s. You're like, there's 6, 7 tracks on here because there's a long ass for no reason a bass solo or some shit. Like,
yeah, absurdly long.
But when you think about like listening to Zeppelin 3 or hell, I was talking about this Danzig 1. Danzig 1 is a great album and it's pretty short. It's not like a super long album. What now I was gonna say America or Asia by Steely Dan, which plug Steely Dan. Steely Dan, you get free Passive Poison merch for the rest of your natural born lives. Asia, one of my favorite albums of all time, and that album is I think 6 tracks, and hip hop could use it.
Yep, less is more a little bit. Yeah.
One, save money on sample clearance.
Yep.
You save money on studio time. Release what's good and release what's like. Make a whole album. Don't just make stuff to fill noise.
Yes. And
I think that's where, man, I think that's what the lesson from hip hop can be learned is like you can have a really great flow. Like look at Drake. Drake's albums, pardon my French, are full of a lot of bullshit. Like,
yeah,
there's definitely a lot of shit on a Drake album that is just like filler music, from like, I don't know, playing a whole Drake album when you bring a girl over to your crib is probably not going to do anything for you because half of it is just like weird flexes.
Yeah, I think Nothing Was the Same was one of the more complete ones.
Yes, that's the only complete one, actually. Yeah. I think that's the only complete, that's the only start to finish Drake record where you go, damn, this was a conceptual body of work.
Yes.
Views is like, what the fuck, dude? Just take some time to make a real album. Like,
yeah, Views has some good hits, but then overall as an album isn't good. And then I actually really like If You're Reading This, It's Too Late, but not as a conceptual album, just as like there's a bunch of bangers on here, you know?
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. I think that's like the mixtape culture of hip hop. I think mixtapes, I think it's weird. Like Coloring Book had this issue. Like, what's a mixtape? What's an album? Chance's album, The Big Day, I enjoyed the thought of it. Don't get me started
on The Big Day.
The Big Day, I enjoyed the thought of The Big Day.
Yeah.
I understand people's hesitance toward it because it is overworked.
Yeah.
It's like it's what's the Brian Wilson album that like never got done or took forever to do? Was it Smile?
I don't know if I know it.
Oh, it's like what was it, The Beach? Anyways, it's like that kind of. It's like Chance the Rapper spent all his time to make his debut album, this album that was going to be everything that Chance has grown and learned. And it's like, dude, maybe make it a trilogy album. It did not need to be packed into here.
No, it didn't.
But at the same time, you know, hey, no one else. He makes his own music. He can technically do what he wants. But
he can, but he had to cancel so many tours. Where I'm like, you didn't sell tickets.
Yeah,
you know, he said it was like, oh, for family reasons. You didn't sell tickets, bro.
I mean, that's absolutely true. Yeah, you gotta save face at some point, you know.
Yeah.
But that album was a lot of just
bullshit.
Yeah,
it was a lot of bullshit.
He could have taken that album, cut it up 4 different ways, and released it as B-sides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love Hot Shower. Hot Shower is my favorite single, and I play this for my wife because she's a music teacher, right? And she'll tell me all the songs she plays with her kids, and she has kindergarten through 8th grade. And kids are fucking amazing because they can figure out like iambic pentameter, rhythm schemes. The other day she was telling me about the kids figured out how to like add some note. I don't know music, but add some note. And they were literally creating their own songs out of Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue, but changing the timbre and tone and stuff like that. Hot Shower is just like an 8th grade music class bit.
Yeah.
You know, the rhyme scheme in it is so juvenile. And I just love 100%. It. I eat it up. But that's not a lead single on your debut album.
No, it's not.
Like,
you know what my favorite song is from that album, and it's probably like the only song I actually listen to, is I Got You.
Okay.
That song, it sounds like a 90s sitcom like theme song, you know? But it's so good. And there's a lot of love and genuine authenticity in it, and I love that. And that's the thing is like, Chance, you're talented. This album wasn't good, but you're still a good artist.
Yeah.
Don't lose that.
Don't.
You know? But you were good with bars. He didn't really give good bars throughout that entire project.
No.
And I like that he's sing-songy, and I like that he's you know, thinking about rhythm and all the melodies and all that. Like, but for some reason, this album it fell short on almost every front on all of those things, which is what is so weird.
Yeah.
Because he's so talented. He's so much more talented than what that album showed. And it's not that there wasn't a lot of money that went into it, you know?
It just didn't land.
It didn't land.
You know what? I think he kind of has the Andre 3000 problem, where he's a musical person, but a dynamite rapper, and he doesn't know how to marry the two. Like, Andre could marry the two when it's needed, but sometimes Andre was just Andre the musician, not the rapper.
Yeah.
And I think that's like Chance the Rapper doesn't know how to be. I mean, it's in his name. He is Chance the Rapper. He's not Chance the composer, Chance the producer, you know. And I think like I would love a Chance sing-songy project, but then it has to be separate from the rap project. It's okay.
Yeah, just call it something different.
Just do something different. You know, don't Nelly it like Sweatsuit. You know.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
You know, what was it like Drake Scorpion? Two sides.
Yeah.
What is this? Final Fantasy 7? We don't need 2 discs.
Dude, Scorpion's way too long.
It's so long. And Beats One made such a big deal when it came out that we're gonna play Scorpion. It's premiering here on Beats One. You heard it first, OVO Sound. And then I remember just sitting in my room listening to it and going like, fuck this.
Yeah, when does this end? Yeah.
Oh, cool. This is Drake kind of just like vamping for like 3 songs. Then here's the hit. Here's Kiki, Do You Love Me? And then he's vamping again. Like,
yeah, and I mean, like, there are certain songs that came out that he kind of threw in last minute because of the Pusha T thing. Like,
oh yeah,
like Mob Ties. I mean, that song's pretty catchy. I gotta say, I like that song. But, like, you know, there are certain ones you could tell he just threw into the last moment, like, fuck you, Pusha T.
Oh, my God. Man, Pusha T, you know, the greatest gift of Father's Day, you know? Like,
oh, my God.
I love the Drake beef, and I think about this all the time. Drake tried to politic himself out of a loss, and it's amazing. I think there's nothing better than people who can't take an L. And when you see that whole entire feud, right, like, Push takes a little slap at him on like Daytona or whatever, and all of a sudden Drake's like in his feelings. He's like, you know what, I'm a Meek Mill this motherfucker, and it's like, don't do it. He's not Meek Mill. No. He's not a child. Don't fuck with him. And then he does it, and then Meek's like, okay, here's you, here's me putting Drake on blast. Okay, now you went too far. You're talking about people's families. You're talking about people's real shit. That's fucked up, man. I'm gonna tell Jay Prince. I'm gonna tell motherfucking Jay Prince. I'm gonna tell. And then all of a sudden, like, Jay Prince is going on fucking, you know, radio shows. He's on Hot 9. He's on Hot 97 or whatever. Yeah, I told Drake he had to squash the beef. He doesn't want to wake up. You know, you get in the pen with pigs. You come up with fleas and shit. And it's like, yeah, you're gonna come out here and speak for your mans like that. Like, that's how you lose a battle.
Yeah,
that's like,
oh yeah,
I'm gonna call my big brother. He'll come here and deal with you, motherfucker. And then it didn't even work.
And then he went on that show with LeBron.
Oh, he went on the shop, yeah. And then he's like, and then he focuses on Kanye. That's the thing that kills me, is that Kanye West. Okay, Kanye West. It's sad for me to hear that Eric's no longer a fan. By the way, it's really hard for me to hear that, because we shared that bond. Because
yeah, oh, he explained it on the podcast. Yeah,
I am a fan of Kanye. In much of the way, you know what, this is going to sound weird. This is going to be a weird comparison. So, you know, feel free to cut it, you know, but I'm a fan of Kanye the way that a lot of people are a fan of Elizabeth Warren.
You like the idea of him?
No. That's not it. I like the idea of Kanye, you know, but it's misogyny that held him back. Oh no, wow, that wasn't a joke.
No, I was saying that because there's a lot of people who I think identify her as like a lifestyle brand rather than actually what her policies that she said she was for.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
My favorite part about Elizabeth Warren has always been her ability to grow and acknowledge and change. You know, that you don't get enough of that in politics. Now, without getting too much in that discussion, that's what I appreciate the most about her as Elizabeth Warren, is that she will grow in the public eye, and she will acknowledge, she will align, and she will assure. And all of these things will happen, but like mostly you're watching a human experience at a very high level, and that's empathetic. That's where you feel it. Kanye West is the same way for me. I watched Kanye West through The Wire. I've watched Kanye West through Graduation. I've seen all of it. I remember I had a bootleg copy of his performance at Coachella after his mom died, and him playing Hey Mom, and that's the hardest thing for me to ever listen to.
Yeah.
At the same time, I've seen this man do fucked up shit, say fucked up shit, but I watched him acknowledge it. I've watched him apologize and try to grow from it. And that's why I'll always be a Kanye West fan, because no other person in hip-hop will ever acknowledge. Jay-Z didn't acknowledge his mistakes to make him money. You know what I mean?
444.
Right? Dr. Dre is the world's, like, he's a fucking domestic abuser. He's a terrible fucking father. Yet we will never acknowledge those aspects because he doesn't want that vision to change. You know what I mean? And that's the thing I hate the most about pop culture, and then hip hop especially. And so when I see Kanye West and I see, like, you know what? He's willing to grow as a person, and he's willing to, like, be wrong. Kanye West has no fucking reason to lie to people because he's been a fuck up in front of people forever. He doesn't give a shit to lie. So why the fuck would he lie about telling Pusha T that you had a child? When Push was like, yo, it was one of 40's chicks that he was fucking that told me.
Yeah.
And then Drake, in his politicking bullshit, he plays like what's her name? Who's Kellyanne Conway card, you know?
Oh my God.
He focuses on the wrong thing, but gets everyone riled up about it. Yeah, you know, Braun, Kanye was my friend. He was my friend. And I shared with that relationship, and then I can no longer be a part of that. And then he says all these politicky things, and then LeBron becomes a part of this narrative, right? And that's what happens. So then Drake gets to sideline the Pusha T beef, gets to sidestep, and then he gets to like keep his little thing with Kanye that he can use whenever people don't like the public opinion of Drake, you know?
Yeah.
Drake's texting teen girls. Man, I fucking can't stand Kanye. He almost ruined my relationship with my son. You know, that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, the texting teen girls thing, I don't know, man.
Dude,
I can't say that I love that.
We're in the city of Chicago. No one in Chicago should be okay with Drake texting teen girls because they let R. Kelly walk into schools and pick girls he was gonna fuck. Like that's no one in the city of Chicago should be like, you know what? I'm okay with what Drake did. No, because you saw this shit happen. You saw powerful men do weird shit. Am I saying that Drake is out here trying to like fuck these girls? No, but I am saying is Drake doesn't have a fucking boundary.
Yeah,
and that's what's fucked up. You know what I mean?
He's too powerful.
He's too powerful. He's too big. Also, like one of them was like he gives me advice on boys and stuff. I'm like, pause, full pause. Is he related to you? Is he your older brother? No. Why is this an adult man telling you about boys? Unless he's trying to warn you about Tyga. Like, I don't know.
Tyga, dude, and Kylie. That's another situation of grooming. I just think the concept of grooming is just gross.
It is.
It's just gross. Because it's like you're in a completely different space in life. You're way more mature. And, you know, teenage girls, no offense to teenage girls, but, like, they don't know yet.
No.
They don't know anything yet.
Stay away from them.
Teenage boys don't know anything yet either.
No.
You know? When you're that age, you're not old enough to understand the games, the psychological games. You're not old enough to understand the nuance of relationships, period.
Absolutely.
Of just like what it means to share yourself with somebody. And meaning emotionally, not just physically. And like what it means to even open up and grow with somebody. And it's really important that when you're growing with somebody, you're already developing yourself and your sense of self, and you have this like individual aspect of yourself, and that needs to be complete. And then when you bring somebody else in, they're an add-on. They're not filling a hole.
Yep.
You know, and there's a huge difference in that. Which actually brings me to the fact that you are married now.
Absolutely.
and I would love for you to talk a little bit about what's married life like.
Oh, dude. You know, I say this all the time, and people think I'm joking. It's exactly the same, but better. Like having my wife as my wife, like I've known my wife for years. Mm-hmm. Like we dated for 8 years, but I've known her since I was like 14, right? There's a intimacy you gain when you get married that is almost like, it's almost like having someone that's always has your back. It's like you're playing the game Double Dragon and you always have a partner. And so there's things about myself that even after dating for 8 years that I learned that I didn't realize I do. Like the other day, I was like, I was really upset about something, and I was just kind of meandering around the house, just eating whatever I wanted to eat, just like kind of just like mindless eating. And my wife was like, "Is everything okay?" And she's just like, "Will you sit down and just talk?" So then I'm like, "I'm gonna eat these saltine crackers. This is what I want to do right now." And then I'm like eating it aggressively, like, and then I'm like, "Okay, maybe I am being bugged by something." And then we have these conversations. And it's awesome. But then like you learn a lot about, like, I don't know how to put this. You learn about like your legacy, and you contextualize what your legacy as a human being is. Mm-hmm. And I know that my legacy doesn't exist without my wife. And I know that I want whatever I do in life to include her in it. And I want to be a part of hers. Because she's also like, she's one of the most talented people I know on this planet, if not the most. My wife loves teaching music. That's like what she wanted to do from the first music teacher she had. She knew she wanted to be a music teacher. My wife is talented enough that she could have a musical career easily. And I don't just say that as her husband. I say that as someone that has listened to her sing. Mm-hmm. But again, from since I was 13 years old. I've always thought my wife had a beautiful voice. And she's very talented. She understands music well, and she understands people well. She makes the choice to teach because that's what she wants to give back. Like when we started dating and we were living in Michigan, when she did her one of the teachers do their student teaching.
Oh yeah.
She student taught in this town, Hudsonville, right? And she loved it. She loved the kids, but she always knew she wanted to be in CPS. And so she kind of like heard through the grapevine, like, you know, to really get an easier way into CPS, you have to be teaching in Illinois previously. Mm-hmm. So she took herself out of her comfort zone, out of Michigan, and went to Champaign-Urbana, you know,
Yeah.
And then like literally this town that's landlocked, she doesn't know anyone or anything, and like made a life for herself there for a few years. Built this rapport with students. She has people that she's still friends with there. And she then applied with full confidence to teach in Chicago. And like that was something she was going to do regardless of me or not. And I think that's so dope. I'm like, yeah, of course, obviously.
Yeah.
Dude, you're such a badass. Hell yeah, fucking right. And all this comes back to me being married, being like, I get to do this on a daily basis. And I get to like hear every day how she works with the system itself of CPS. I don't want to get too much into it because it's a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's amazing how she's able to find these moments when she's got all of these roadblocks, these opportunities to like, that could be easier on her. But she's like, I'm just going to work with what I have because the most important thing to me is these kids. It's less so this institution. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, dope.
And wouldn't it be nice if we were able to make those obstacles not obstacles?
Oh, it would be so dope. The hardest thing for me to like when I hear stories about like some of like the kids and stuff, and you hear about behaviors, right? You hear about like these kids have things that like drive them to, but these kids do like Kanye level fucked up shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, on one hand, you're young enough where I want to know what's making you do this. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you're getting old enough and one person is not going to be able to like fix this because you're going to go home and reset in the summertime.
Yeah.
She has kids that are angels in the 4th grade, go 5th grade. They come back their 6th grade year, all of a sudden their voice gets a little deeper. They're a little bit more embarrassed in front of girls, and now they're acting out in school again. And that's the part that I think is such a societal aspect, It's like community building, It's like,
yes.
There's like in Holland, Michigan, like there's a lot of levels to Holland, Michigan. There's, institutional roadblocks for people of color. There's also really great people in Holland that don't see race is a reason to not like somebody, and there's people that want to see Holland succeed. But also like the general rule of Holland is like, we don't want bad people to leave the city of Holland. We want Holland Public Schools to make good people.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that everyone at Holland Public Schools, there's maybe a 1% of that my graduating class. The 1%. The 1% of shitty people that graduated in my class.
Yeah.
I could say that about my wife's class. I could say about that my brother-in-law's class. There's maybe a small film of people that are really shitty that graduated, but Holland Public Schools worked really hard to create good people. CPS tries to, but CPS has got so many aspects like working against it. It's got, the city of Chicago itself is fucking, segregated economically, racially, and socially. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you had a public school system that's supposed to make it equal for everyone. You've got, people choosing to move. And I had a lady I talked to the other day. She was in line. Actually, okay, she was in line at getting raffle tickets when I was trying to get this Jordan shoe. And I don't know how they got up to church because he was there with their son, right? And she's like, yeah, my son wants these shoes. His dad's house is over here. I'm going to drop him off after we get through here. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, oh, so do you live out here? She's like, oh, no, I live in Skokie. But he has a better opportunity at getting at a school if he lives at his dad's house. You know what I mean?
That's frustrating.
That's
frustrating. And that's where, we're punishing, especially with the way that schools are funded here. We're punishing kids for living in a certain area, and then people specifically move out of that area, thus removing the funding, thus double punishing again.
Yeah. The system itself is built to be exploited when really it should be built to like allow for a sort of malleable membrane of sort of equality, doing something here for a little bit to make it work. Mm-hmm. I think a weird thing like in like Michigan, for example, like school of choice. My parents needed school of choice because we lived in the border of Holland and Zeeland. Mm-hmm. My sister went to Zeeland, I went to Holland, and Holland is like deceptively more diverse. As in like Holland, the census I think a few years ago was like, I feel like 10 years ago, was like 60% of people were of Latinx or Latin descent. Mm-hmm. And then like the next was like identifiably white and then was like Asian and black in this like little mixture. But the school system itself was so diverse that like it wasn't uncommon to go to quinceañeras in middle school.
Yeah.
And I've been to like my fair share, and I think it's so cool. But yet I know there's kids that go to school who maybe black in the South Side that have never been to a quinceañera because they don't have people of Latinx descent in their school system. You know what I mean? And those different experiences help make a person. They make a person. But also, you know, if you're used to a certain environment and area and you're trying to protect your area, there's all these other elements that go into place. Like you sort of turtle shell because you know that someone's going to exploit any weakness. You know, it's like I was reading the Michael Harriot from The Root had a good Twitter thread about was it Fred Hampton?
Buttigieg is a lying motherfucker. He's the one who wrote that. And he is, but go on.
He wrote about like the CIA's plot with like Fred Hampton and with like MLK and all that stuff. And like the fact that the CIA wanted segregation in the city because they felt the races were easier to manage. That's terrifying.
Yep.
But that it worked and it stuck because now everyone's scared to meld their areas because, you know, it could be exploited, you know? Yeah. Imagine if someone, like some young person rises in Chicago and says, you know, enough is enough. We got to unite these areas. They're instantly putting a target on their head. And the CIA is probably smart enough not to do that anymore.
You know, so there's an argument that the CIA is the one who released the stories about, Russia wants Bernie to get elected. They did that because the CIA has a deal with the Washington Post, and the Washington Post is the one who broke that story.
Yeah.
And so one could argue that the Washington Post, albeit might have some good stories written in it every once in a while, because, you know, it's not a monolith. Like, there are individual writers who might be working for them that are decent. But there's an argument to be made that is the outlet that the CIA and the other intelligence agencies, when they want to, like, we really want to go to war with this country. We don't really have the facts on our side. Let's just have the stenographers write exactly what we want. And they give them a press release, and then these reporters are thinking, I'm getting an inside scoop, not knowing, like, no, you're feeding directly into what they fucking want you to do.
They're just giving you what you want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I would say, I mean, maybe they don't want to go straight MLK or you know, try to assassinate, but they... You know, I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest.
That's true. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't put past anything against the government, but...
they overthrow governments across the border. You know
what's funny to me? Like, someone the other day was talking about Snowfall and how cool it was as a show. And I was like, that's a true story, right? Like, the government really did that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not, like, I understand that you can't overthrow a government without casualties, like on a high level.
Yeah.
So I understand that we're working in the best case scenario of where we're at this moment in time. You know, I get it, but you have to be aware of the historical examples. You know,
MK Ultra.
You got to be aware.
Mind control experiments. They literally did them because, you know, they didn't work because that's not what LSD does.
Right.
But like they tried to do mind control experiments on people.
People were hurt.
Yes.
You know,
those were American citizens. Those weren't overseas people. They stole American citizens and drugged them.
Unethical.
Completely unethical.
No one was held accountable.
No one. Yep.
And that's to me the different that we're going to talk about politics. That's what makes real progressives. That's the linchpin to what politics should be evolving to. Is it should be about accountability. I don't believe any president is going to get elected without blood on their hands. Everyone who steps in that office and gets made the president, guess what? Someone's going to die. Jimmy Carter, I know, great Habitat for Humanity, builds great houses. Jimmy Carter's got blood on his hands.
Yeah.
Tyler Harrison was in office for 20 days? He's got blood on his hands.
Yeah.
They all do because there's a world that we're not aware of, sure. But the idea should be to minimize as much impact as possible.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that, like, I hold accountable to every politician I have to vote, from alderman all the way up to president, is how do you minimize impact and how do you help build a better community? You know, it's like the Maria Kondo of politics. Does this spark inspiration?
Yeah.
Does this spark good person? And that's what I want from my politicians. I can really give a damn about, where you started. I want to know like what you've done in the last 5 to 10 years to prove your point. And if you've done the same thing for the last like 50 years, like Bernie, awesome.
Yeah.
Then that means I trust you.
Yeah. Then that's consistency, and it shows no matter what the context, your principles override whatever the best political decision is.
Yeah. And that's always been sort of my standpoint. I mean, I did debate and competitive like speech from the age of 15 to 21. And nothing, I used to want to work in politics so bad. I used to want to like either be a speechwriter, work in the campaign room, because I loved all of it. It was like Tech Week, but Tech Week was every day.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment that the air in my lungs left and I was like, I can't be a part of this anymore. And I loved speech. I met some awesome and dynamite people in speech. But I was at a tournament. It was what was that? It was my last tournament as a senior. It was my last national tournament. And I had this speech I was writing about how we talk about the continent of Africa and how our Western ideas lend itself to treat Africa like a country and not focus on the country, not focus on the individual countries like, South Africa, Djibouti, all these areas that they exist. It's not monolithic.
Totally different. Yeah.
And how Western communities fucked that place. And so I'm talking to this in the hallway before a round with some friends. And this person who I thought was a friend and a person that, I met through the speech circuit looks me dead in the face and goes, "You don't really think we can fix Africa, do you?" And I was like, why the fuck would I be doing this goddamn speech right now?
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
Am I going to just talk for talking? No, I'm saying it because I think there's an answer.
I wrote this shit. I spent time on it because I believe in this shit.
Yeah.
And then I realized it drained me because I was like, fuck, am I trivializing what I care about by trying to win a fucking contest? And it made me really disenfranchised because I see some of those same people working for campaigns, doing things to win rounds. I remember in debate, I hated policy debate because policy debate was all about like, if you're in the negative, how to win, strategy.
Yeah.
Take an unpopular position because you can win with it. And I remember you would run spending disadvantages, weird critiques. And and I'll never forget this, the ultimate way to win a round in a critique about a plan or an impact was to run a critique that was like, aren't you trivializing this by trying to win a round in a debate tournament on this day at this time because you have no other good arguments? Yeah, I remember my senior year of high school, it was how do we increase numbers in like national service programs or like the Army, like the Armed Forces, anything, the Peace Corps, all that jazz. And one of the plans that was around was about lesbian baiting. And it was about like why you have to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell because it leads to rape. Like women who were like either gay or not gay were being raped by superior officers under the threat that they were going to be outed and be dishonorably discharged. Like this was a real fucking thing that happened.
That's fucked up.
And I remember reading this and reading some fucking horrific stories and being like, it is so fucked up that we are making a plan to win a debate by using these women's voices and stories. And I just couldn't do it.
You felt gross.
Yeah, it felt gross. And I wish I would have had that in the front of my mind when I'm in college writing these speeches about things I care about, but ultimately being like, damn, is it fucked up? I'm trying to keep a scholarship and win a tournament because I care about this thing, but also how much of it is gamesmanship. Yeah. And that turned me off to politics solely. I didn't want to work in it. I didn't want to deal with it because it was all too juvenile. It was
it was petty.
It was petty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now I'm kind of my general theory about engagement is how authentic are you? You know what I mean? I want to see the next. I would love to see a revolutionized DNC, and I would love for it to inspire, and I would love to uplift its younger voices, not just the younger voices that are acceptable to see on camera. I mean, to really look within itself and go, hey, how do we do this better? Mm-hmm. How do we be a party that champions youth voices? And
that's not what they're about, though.
But how do they get there?
So I think the way they get there, and this is just my theory on it, is a straight up hostile takeover of the party. I mean, I think just like primary challengers, outside organizations like Justice Democrats, which got AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, got them all elected.
Yeah.
I think you need those outside interests that are genuinely, they're funded, they're grassroots, they're funded by regular people, they have volunteers that are regular people, and they use their ability to organize and understanding of how campaigns work to pick up regular people who are really passionate, who just seem like they got a lot of potential for the job, and show them how to be a politician. But in the sense, meaning like teach them the game so that they don't play like a rookie, but have them going in because they're principled. Have them going in because they really believe in this shit. And there's a lot of people in this country who really believe in this stuff. They just don't think that they could be a politician. But I think we need to change that, because Donald Trump proved you don't have to be a politician to win.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to be smart or have good ideas. You know, you can just rail against the shitty system and then you'll win. You know? So it's like if we get a bunch of people who genuinely care about policy, who genuinely care about impacting the lives of everyday people, get the organization and the infrastructure of people who know the game, but who are passionate about these things, right? So that's the other important aspect. They can't just know the game and know how to play and not actually have any principles. They got to have principles too, but then have them teach all these regular people how to become politicians. So then instead of it being the political class versus the regular people, it's like it's the organizers that become the political class. And it really is just a bunch of grassroots movements that kind of overpower. And I think we've proven through Bernie Sanders' campaign and some of these other progressive people that have been elected, that it can be done through regular like $18 donations. It can be.
Absolutely.
Bernie Sanders raised $46.5 million in February. $46.5 million and I think it was 300 or 350,000 new donors on top of what he's already had constantly contributing. So even if Bernie doesn't win this, which I think he's still very much in it. He's actually closer than he was versus Hillary at the same point in the competition, because that's what it is. But at this point, you know, he has some tough states that he really can't afford to lose. Or needs to minimize the damage of the ones he's going to lose. But I think the more that Joe Biden talks, the more people are going to realize he's just not up for it. And they haven't had a real good look at him in a while because they've been hiding behind 10 other candidates.
He's been playing the side game.
He's
been trying to little finger it.
Yes, he's totally been little fingering the whole thing. And I would argue not even him. I would say Obama's actually the one who's been little fingering it for him. Yeah. Obama made a bunch of calls. This has been reported on. I don't know how true it is, but Obama made a bunch of calls and said, Pete, you need to drop out. And he had conversations with them all. And he basically told them all, like, you need to drop out and get behind Biden because you guys are not viable. And if you all stay in it, you're going to just hand this to Bernie. And so he did that. He stepped in and he stopped it from happening. And I can't believe it worked. It fucking worked.
I mean, but it's the system, you know,
and protecting itself.
I think the other part is there's a lot of voting in fear. You know, like they want it. Biden's electable.
He's not though.
And I go, 2016 maybe. Like
yeah in 2016 when he was sharper.
It's kind of like it's like I remember Howard Dean. Howard Dean was so electable
until he had that coked
until
out.
he became a meme. But until he became a meme. Could you imagine if that had never happened? Like Howard Dean would have probably been, he would have replaced Tim Kaine first of all, or he probably would have been a front runner in his own right. I think that's what's really funny to me about this party is that like they're voting and they're playing chess. They're playing chess because they have to in a sense. But at this point, they're going up against a guy who's playing checkers and he can't count. And they're seeing this like, and I'm like, you know, one of my favorite like analysis of the 2016 election was like, there were so many states and counties and communities that they just took for granted. And those communities were suffering. We saw it. I mean, hell, I'm from Michigan. I saw like people that would normally be blue running people just feel like
fuck these people,
taken advantage of.
Fuck
here
these
comes
Democrats.
This fucking dumbass celebrity that, you know, had fucking Omarosa on his show and you know, had whoever else pop culture wise was on that stupid ass show The Apprentice, and they feel some sort of weird kinship with them, and they believe him because he's like a wrestler. He plays a successful businessman on television, but That's kayfabe. Outside of the ring, he's a dumbass.
Yeah.
He's a dumbass that's managed to fall into like a successful path.
Yeah, well, he was handed a shit ton of money, so it's pretty hard to fuck it up from there.
Yeah, well, yeah, and but then like he just has a campaign director that says, "Yeah, go convince." He knows how Ponzi schemes work. His election was a Ponzi scheme. He went to people who were willing and desperate and got them to invest in something that ultimately fucked them.
Yep.
And now those people in Michigan are like, "Man, we got fucked by this guy."
Yeah.
Well, what do we do now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the DNC kind of picks up on that, and they go like, "Well, I know Bernie seems like he'd be really good for you, but have you tried babbling Biden? Have you tried a guy who talks and double talks? Have you tried it?"
Yeah. Have you tried the guy who said that he was arrested with Nelson Mandela in South Africa? Literally, dude, the frustrating part is the media is completely complicit because they're pretending like he doesn't do all these things. They're really not covering some of these stories in the way that they should. And they focus on this false Bernie bro narrative of like that everybody's just so toxic online. It's like, dude, no, they're toxic to you because you have horrible takes all day on TV. And this is their one chance to fight back to you.
I think it's like a weird, it's such a, there are people that have real interactions. Mm-hmm. Like there are people that I know and I politically like, I love to hear their takes on it. And I love to like, and they're fucking intelligent. They're awesome people. Mm-hmm. And they get abuse for Bernie bros. And I know that. Mm-hmm. It's obvious. And it sucks that that's their narrative. And I know that those same people changing their mind is not what they want to hear. They want acknowledgement. You know, mm-hmm. They want acknowledgement of their abuse. And I think that's what's important. And I think Bernie's like starting to learn that more, you know, like you got to acknowledge this exists. But then the other side of that coin is that the media that reports on all of this has to discuss the depth of all of this, the layers of this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like there are layers. There are Bernie supporters who are very toxic online, mm-hmm. that are very loud online. Mm-hmm. But the key word is loud. Mm-hmm. And it sucks that they exist, and we should all be wagging our fingers at them.
Sure.
But let's focus on the policies. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on the actual policies that people support. Let's acknowledge the abuse. Let's try to minimize it. Let's attack it. Let's get it away. Mm-hmm. But we do that by focusing on the actual message.
Well, and by the way, those same toxic people exist in every single campaign.
Absolutely.
They just don't talk about the other ones because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get the conversation piece, but I also just kind of like, again, I care about the actual content and the policy, and like, yeah. Does this person inspire me? You know, mm-hmm. And I take that for what it really is, because at the same time, like, there's a lot of things that we could all focus on that we're bombarded with from our various perspectives that we can make a fight for, that no one wants to like just spend all their time focusing on. Yeah. I would love that every time I spent physical cash, I would quote Dave Chappelle and say, "Here's a baseball card with a slave owner on it." Yeah. But man, that would make it really hard to spend money every day.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
Right? So it makes it really hard, I think, for like a Bernie supporter point of view to be able to talk about the policies that you know are good and can help people, when those policies have this like layer put on them by everyone else, being like, it doesn't matter, his entire culture is toxic, it's going to be bad for everyone. It's like, no, that's not that. No, it's not. Yeah, it's an oversimplification. And so I've heard an argument made by are you familiar with Ben Dixon? Yeah. So I actually talked about this with Eric earlier, but Ben Dixon talked about how the reason why they use this Bernie bro narrative is the establishment's way of silencing the movement. They're basically saying, if you speak out against us, we will misrepresent you so that, you know, it seems like you're being the asshole, and so that we can silence your voice. So you can stop critiquing. You can stop spreading this message, or, you know, spreading the reality of how bad we're fucking you. We don't want you talking about it. So guess what? We're going to, in bad faith, make up this thing to try to silence you.
And they don't do it for the other campaigns. And you know that he has a genuine double standard. There was a Bernie blackout for a long time where they literally just didn't cover him. And then they started realizing, like, well, that didn't work. Yeah. You know, he's the front runner now. So then they started just doing nonstop smear campaigns. But I'm like, you don't see this at any other candidate. That's got to tell you something. Yeah. Why are they only smearing one candidate? Well, I can tell you right now, if MLK was still alive today, he would be the Bernie. Like, he would be like smeared constantly. He would not be this beloved figure that everybody is putting him as, because he was considered a radical right before he died. He was killed because of his poor people's movement. He was killed specifically because he was making real ground and real progress, and he was for socialist ideas. He was for evening the playing field for regular people. So the fact that, you know, you have somebody like Bernie, who honestly represents a lot of what MLK stood for, literally marched with him. And then you have, you know, these corporate centrists who are the exact white moderate that MLK talks about, you know? And I don't know if you saw this clip that happened where this surrogate for Biden, Hillary Rosen, she tried explaining to Nina Turner.
She tried to she did the white splainy thing.
She did the white splainy thing.
White splainy. I want a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode about that. I want an episode where Larry David tries to white splain things.
Yeah. Well, what was so frustrating was one, she was wrong about what the white moderate comment is all about. But then on top of it, the fact that she speaks over Nina after Nina gave her a moment to say, okay, you can say your stupid shit you're saying, and now I have a counter for you. She didn't even let her counter. She was like, no, I'm going to interrupt because I know there's only 30 seconds left on this bit, and I'm going to just talk over you and counterpoint over you. And then on top of it, she was wrong. And then when she apologized in her tweet, she said, I'm sorry to the angry black women, or like, I'm just like, your apology is worse than what you did the first time. Like, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up.
It's every 4 years. It's the circus.
Yeah.
It's the circus. I sincerely hope, my wish for all Democrats and liberals is that younger people start getting that confidence to, like, change the system, acknowledge what doesn't work. Just acknowledge it. You know, that's the first step, is acknowledging that something's not working. One of my favorite political moments, I think, is like one of the funniest sort of like a Confederacy of dunces kind of moment is when the Tea Party came along and hijacked an election. Remember the freshman term Tea Party members? They're like, we're going to do this. We're going to have we're going to close borders, open guns. We're putting guns on eagles. They're shooting everyone around town. You know, condoms. Yeah. No, we're burning all the condoms. People only have sex in marriage with the opposite respective gender. They got into the Senate, they got into the House, and they got shut the fuck down.
Yeah.
All of the like old party Republicans were like, we don't do this here.
Yeah.
No. Welcome. You have constituents. Guess what? Your constituents don't matter here. And then all of those Tea Party members lost re-election bids. They laughed themselves out of like growing, which is good because they suck.
Yeah, we don't really want them to grow. Yeah.
But what I think would be the best reaction to progressive people showing up in the Democratic Party is, like you said earlier, helping learn them what the game is, and making sure their principles stick.
Yes.
So that when they become freshman senators, freshman representatives, they're able to come in, they're able to work with what they have, and able to honestly tell their constituents, like, hey, this spending bill, I had to vote on a plan plank I didn't like, and that I don't support, but this is what we're able to gain from it. We're able to gain more money towards Medicaid, Social Security, stuff like that. That's the meat of it. Yes. Everyone knows that you have to take the good with the bad.
Totally.
You have to eat shit sometimes.
Sometimes.
It's the machine. It's society. We're in it. We're living it. But if you don't acknowledge that you're putting shit in your mouth, then why are you even eating?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, if we can't acknowledge, like, I could say that I spent 8 years campaigning for Obama, from my senior year of high school to my time in college. I can acknowledge the benefits and the good things gained from the Obama presidency. But I can acknowledge that while it was great to have less soldiers dying, the inhumane element of war with drones came around, and that was hard for me to swallow.
Yeah.
But we can grow from that. We can acknowledge those moments. Go, you know what I don't want in my next candidate? Someone that likes the use of drones.
Yeah.
I want someone that likes to avoid conflict, you know?
Diplomatic solutions first.
First.
And then only in the worst case scenario do you resort to any form of violence.
Yeah.
Because there's some inevitable conflicts that you actually have to use for. I mean, like, we live in the world. Like, you know.
Minimize it. Be more diplomatic, you know?
Yep.
I think that's like, you know, it's like when we talk about like taxes with companies, like big companies. I know you're not going to rewrite a tax code in a year or 4 years. It's not going to happen. But damn it, what's got to be done to make it more attractive of an idea to have a more equal tax code? You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
And that's how you level the playing field.
Absolutely.
Because right now, you know, if all the wealth being generated is going only to 1% of the population, eventually there's no more wealth to be stolen from the poor people.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Well, and then you do that shrinkage of the middle class. It grows, it ebbs, it flows. And I think about this in the concept of like, we talk about taxes and people go, I don't want to pay more taxes. You know, I'm a business owner, or I work in a business and I make X amount. I make six figures. That sucks that you're going to get hurt by tax changes, and you shouldn't. The people that should be hurt are the people that are on your board of investors. But because they don't want to eat their humble pie, their slice, even you, higher middle class person, are unfortunately going to have to be effective. But if you were able to stand up and say, no, we should be paying fair and equal taxes, then your pie gets a little bit more even.
Yep.
The people that are paying uneven pies that make six figures and that they have 4 kids, they pay for their kids' college, all this shit. Those individuals could have a better form of paying taxes if their people that owned their companies paid their taxes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It makes sense.
It does.
You know, like I think the idea that like it's just going to be some ground that like, boom, you make this much, you're going to... No.
No. It's progressive tax code.
Yeah. The wealthiest people have assets that are worth more than your salary.
Yep.
So on paper, they may make $900,000, but in reality, they're worth $3.5 million.
Yep.
And it doesn't make sense.
And that's where I really like Bernie's wealth tax, because it only applies on people who own, I think it's 25 or 35 million. I think it might be 35 million.
Yeah.
And it's 1% on any dollar after the 35 million. And I could be wrong. Maybe it's 25 million, but don't quote me on that specific thing. But the way that it works is it goes up. So let's say it's 35 million is the 1%. And it's only dollars after that 35 million. It then is, let's say 50 million is the next one. That's then 2%. 2% on every dollar over the 50, but the 1% over every dollar over the 35. And so the way that it works is like you're still getting your 35 million, or you're still, you still have your wealth, but over time it shrinks people with absurd amounts of wealth. It shrinks their wealth down. But they're still millionaires. These people aren't hurting.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're still making a shit ton of money. And not to mention, in this system, when you have a lot of money, it's very easy to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're disadvantaging them at all. And that little bit you're taking off of them in a very fair assessment, and it's a very small percentage, is huge to what it allows to go back into the system to circulate and change hands.
Absolutely.
If poor people don't have enough money to buy shit, then they can't buy shit. But if you give poor people more money, they spend all of it because they don't have a choice.
Yes.
Their bills go towards everything all the time. But rich people's bills, they sit in a bank account for years. That same dollar you put in there, that doesn't get seen for potentially a decade because of how much money they make and how little it's circulating. You can only buy so many jets and cars and I
mean, well, also
yachts.
they're avoiding paying their bills.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's just like, okay, why would you make that much money and then avoid paying?
It's because it's about the ego of running up the score. I want to be one of the richest people in the country.
It's so dumb.
It's such an think trap. It's
so dumb. It's the dumbest dumb idea of all time.
It is.
Like think of it like this. If you were to take $1 million off someone that made $36 million, they're back down to 35, right? Mm-hmm. That $1 million could pay for lunches for like 6 counties for kids. Kids deserve to eat.
Yep.
I don't care where the kid's from. If that tax code allows someone to say, well, why do the poor kids only get the free meals? Well, no, everyone can get a free meal. You know why? Because kids should be focusing on learning, not eating.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so simple. It's so simple. You can't have an economy without healthy people contributing to it. You know?
Have you seen the school lunch debts?
Oh, dude, it's fucking...
That is fucked. That is so fucked.
It is so fucked. It is. I used to bitch about paying for school lunch. Like I paid $6.50 for school lunch in Holland, and we got like a pizza, breadstick, and a milk or whatever. And sometimes I didn't have $6.50. Sometimes my mom was like, "Yeah, we're fucking broke. Like, make something work," and we would. But I think there's some kids who are paying $15 to get half that in certain schools, and then they rack up $30. Next thing you know, they have the tax man coming for them, and they're under the age of 18. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's literally evil and inhumane. The fact that they even do that. That system is, again, designed to perpetuate this indentured servitude through debt. I mean, that's what the school system is too. The school system for like higher education is designed to get you stuck with the man, stuck with the banks, in a way that then you're working a very low wage job when you first get out of college, depending on your degree. But even if you get a good degree, you're severely underpaid for what you're doing.
Oh, for sure.
And your bills are significantly higher than anyone else's bills were if they were in the same place, if they were a boomer. Like, they didn't have to make as much money. Things didn't cost as much, and their dollars went further. Yeah. So it's like, there's such a huge disconnect generationally, where we are saddled with a lot of debt. Everything costs more. We're paid less money. Wages have not grown at all in 40 years, despite productivity going through the roof. I mean, this is a rigged system. It just is. And it's not a conspiracy to say it. It just is. And everybody feels it. They're so in it. They don't realize it. Well, it's just like are you gonna enjoy your night out with your significant other, or are you gonna go to bed in the fetal position worrying about your bills? And everyone makes that choice every day who has student loan debt. Like so I went to Eastern Michigan in Michigan in Ypsilanti, and I was a BFA, and they're in that program. So most BFA programs make you do multidisciplines, like take a few hours of other disciplines, so you're versed, right? But to get to the like graphic design, get to your discipline that you wanted, every department had a test or like a portfolio review. I distinctly remember my portfolio being, like not great, but being good for undergrad. I had real designers that review it. The people that I interned for reviewed it, gave me real feedback about my design skills and abilities. And I had to go through 3 rounds of reviews before they let me in. Meanwhile, there was a girl who literally stapled hers and like brought it in, but they realized that I was as good as she was going to get. And so she gets in the program. Now, do I believe in a grave curve? Sure. Yeah.
But like literally, and we graduated together, and I saw her final portfolio. It was offensive how underprepared she was for her career. So they saddled her with all of this debt. No one gave her a realistic expectation of what her skill set was, or helped grow her skill set enough where it can overcome that gap. And instead, she's going to walk out with like $50,000 to $60,000 worth of debt, and have maybe a pinhole's chance of getting a job that could pay for that.
Yeah.
I think last I looked, she's like, working at a Goodrich movie theater, still trying to find a design job on LinkedIn. And it's like, yeah, there was probably 8 or 9 people in my program like that were just like nice people, but maybe graphic design wasn't their thing. The table, sorry.
Yeah.
Wasn't their forte. And the school, because they need to have a certain amount of people in their graduating class, they got to fill, graphic design skill set 1, 2, 3. They pass these people along. And granted, my relationship with some of my professors and even my advisors in that department at times were contentious, because I recognized this, because I was getting a double standard. I'm thankful that they saw something in me enough that made them want me to do better.
And push you.
And push me. But also the other aspect is, you gamed them and you fucked them.
Yeah.
You know? So now you've conned them into this degree they can't use.
Well, and what's frustrating is, like, I always hear critiques from the right of, like, well, don't get a degree in philosophy, or, like, you know, and it's like, oh, so we don't want to encourage people to learn the things that they're interested in? Like, that's stupid. Yeah. It's a stupid way of thinking. But I do think that what's important is that if somebody chooses a degree like that, then yes, then you need to then prepare them for what will it actually turn into as a job. Yes. I mean, yes, teach them the concepts. It's important to know the history of certain things and to know, like, a lot of the larger aspects of whatever the topic is that you're studying. But then also there needs to be a huge integration of how are you really going to use this, though?
Absolutely.
When I went to school for video production. And part of the reason why I'm able to shoot the podcast the way that I did is because I actually did get hands-on work where I worked with lights and cameras, and my teachers for those classes were awesome. Shout out to all of my teachers that I had for those classes. But you know how many bullshit-ass fucking classes I had to take in addition to that just to get a degree to have the hours I needed to graduate? It was horseshit. I can't even believe I wasted that much money on those classes, because the 5 or 6 classes that I took that were all about, like, video production and screenwriting and all that, those were all useful because I actually learned how to hands-on work with stuff and to have a practical element of how to shoot something. But beyond those 5 or 6 classes, everything else, fuck everything else.
Yeah, take, you know, chemistry 100.
Yeah, like I mean, and I took financial accounting in college. And that class was so stressful, and I didn't need it for anything. And I ended up dropping that class because I did so bad. I was like, dude, I don't care about any of this, and this isn't going to help me at all. Like, dude, why am I taking this class?
So many classes, and you can sub those hours out with better things. Like,
oh yeah.
So my minor was in communications, and because I did speech and all that jazz, everyone pretty much did it. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the most useful, like, extra hour class I took was a 700 level grad class just for 3 credits with this phenomenal professor, Michael Tu. Shout out Michael Tu, great professor at Eastern Michigan University. And it was called Communicating with the LGBT Community Through Media. And it was just about the history of, like, queer, like, cinema, newspapers, articles, how they reported from the very iteration of media to modern times. And that class was rich with discussion of privilege, of things. That's the first time I heard the term gender non-binary was in that class, and that was 2012.
Before it's popular.
Before it was popping.
Yeah.
There was a woman in that class who was a Native American woman, and she was in a poly relationship, and it was something that was common in her tribe she was from. And she described raising her children in that community, and I was like, fuck, holy fucking shit. My mind was blown, and honestly, it was a slice of humility, humble pie, where I was like, I thought I was a pretty humble person, and I was aware of people's, you know, experiences, but there's so much of this world I don't know.
Yeah,
that class is 100 billion times more useful than chemistry was. My chemistry lab and lecture was this old fucking Arnold Palmer looking motherfucker just telling jokes, telling science puns, and I love puns, but it was not worth $12,000.
Like, yeah, totally. And I mean, for people trying to get into chemistry or in labs or doing something, yes, then take chemistry. Yeah. Then that's important to you. And I think it's important to have general education, right? I think everybody should have some base level of knowledge of math, of history, of science. You know, teach everybody that. Then once people start figuring out what they really like and what they want to pursue, let them pursue that.
Yep.
And let them pursue the classes that they want to, and make it in a way that it's easier for them to do that. Because I think for certain electives or whatever, it was hard for me to find classes that I think I really wanted to learn. And there was a lot of classes I literally picked just to fill, like scheduling.
Did they give you the white paper sheet with like little check boxes on it for each section?
I don't even remember how they did it. Oh. Maybe a preview. They might have given you that, like where they give you a sheet of all the majors and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I hate getting that booklet in the mail.
Oh, dude, the booklet's unreadable.
Oh my God. Here's what we're offering this term, and you're just like going through like fuck.
Yep.
I hated that. You want to know what the fucking most mind-boggling thing? Because you had Cody on the show, right?
I have not had Cody on the show. I've scheduled with Cody a couple times. We have had cancellations and stuff.
All right.
So
I hope you guys do, because Cody went to real art school. You know, He's gonna kill me for saying that. But Cody did the real experience. He's a real artist.
Imposter syndrome. This is the theme.
But I remember, so because it's a BFA program at a university, doesn't focus in art. Your capstone class is like, the capstone class at Eastern was gallery show. So you put on a class gallery show. You pick a theme if you want, yada yada yada. Each discipline kind of picks. You're kind of ganged up by your discipline, and you pick what you're going to focus on. So the graphic designers got stuck with posters, postcards, collateral, website.
Sure.
And it was me, my friend Chelsea, and another girl in our class, Stephanie, I think someone else. I don't really remember. And then the photographers were photographing all the artwork and stuff, right? And those are two practices that have practical applications. Like, the reason I didn't major in drawing is because I knew drawing didn't have a practical application for me. I was told that at a very young age. And so we're in class, and this class was about 6 hours long. It was like lab and lecture kind of thing. Or maybe it was like 4. First part of class was spent talking about our show while planning. And the second part of the class was built in the artist packet, which turns out I didn't need as a graphic designer, because an artist packet is what you use to apply to gallery shows and stuff. Like, it's knowledge I'm glad I have now, because I'm applying to gallery shows. But that class, Amy, our teacher, Amy Saxeter, amazing artist, the greatest teacher in the art department at Eastern Michigan University. The jaw-dropping looks on some of the other disciplines' faces when she was explaining, like literally the first day, she's like, yeah, oftentimes as artists, you're going to find you're paying your bills by lab and lectures or just working another job. We're going to talk about how to get your artwork out there. And the people were like, what do you mean? I don't just like apply to a gallery and I show my stuff there all the time. No, you do residencies, you build galleries, you're for all intents and purposes, you're a fucking clown, and you got to entertain people with your artwork.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're Mondrian or you're fucking Damien Hirst. All artists are entertainers. We're clowns, and we have to like make stuff that people want to engage with. And the look on the face of the other disciplines was defeating. And I was like, you know what should have happened early on in their education? Someone should have talked to them about, like, art is a hustle.
Yeah. What's the reality of it?
You don't go to LinkedIn and apply to a job as a printmaker. Like, you print make for a studio maybe, but if you want to sell your work, if you want to make your work worth something, there's a form and format. And there was a lot of people that just, like, the air out of the room sucked out. They're freaking out.
Because they're like, fuck, I don't want to do that. I
spent all this money on this degree. My forbearance period is 6 months. Got to start paying this shit off. But also I got to make artwork. All my artwork in my undergrad. Is this quality enough to submit to a gallery? I don't know. Well, I've been buying these, you pay your fee for art students. You pay, like, your supplies fee. Well, I can't take that iMac home with me. Fuck, I got to use my old ass MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to buy paint. Well, the school's been providing canvases for me, or the school's been providing, turpentine for me. Shit, it racks up. So now I got to work extra hard to feed myself and to feed my art like a child.
Yeah.
And people panic, And I felt for my classmates. I was like, that sucks. That's a shitty feeling.
Yeah, they should have prepared you.
Exactly.
Because you're a kid. You're a kid before you go into college.
Absolutely.
High school does not, it somewhat preps you on, like, what you need to learn in college, but nothing preps you better for college than being in college.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? But by then, it's too fucking late. You're already in it. So you have a much harder time pivoting beyond the first 2 years. The first 2 years is your first time to pivot, and when you do pivot, it's costing you money.
Oh, yeah, and you don't realize it, because there's this... there's these, what is it when you bowl and they have like the safety lanes, like the
yeah
that's
the bumpers.
What the first few years of college is. You don't realize, like, I'm independent. I remember, the first time you're on campus, you leave your dorm room, going out, getting some beers, hanging out. Oh, it's midnight. Oh fuck, I'm gonna stay out. I'm gonna do my fucking thing.
Yeah, you're free.
And you don't know, but you know what? Your junior year, all of a sudden, sleep deprivation hits you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you need more rest. All of a sudden, beer is really expensive. All of a sudden, you got a job you've been working for 2 years on campus and they want you to be full-time when you graduate, but you don't know if you want to be stuck in that career path, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And college is a microcosm for the bigger world. And no one tells you that until you're dropping out.
Yep. Exactly.
Whether it's with the degree or not, until you're like the bottom's out, congratulations, hat in the air. Figure it out.
Good luck.
Good luck. Hope your dad has a nice business for you to work at.
Yeah. Literally.
Like, I got lucky. My mom hooked me up with an internship at her company when I was a sophomore. And in the summers, I got paid weekly. I worked 40 hours a week. It was Monday through Friday. And I could go out and fuck off with my friends.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. And I remember when I graduated, I went back to work there and I was like, this is weird. I'm not doing this just for the summer.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for the summer into the fall.
Yeah.
And I could fuck off with my friends, but all my friends were in the same area. And it was daunting. It was just kind of like...
reality sets in.
Yeah, I'm paying rent,
Yeah.
Cool, this weekly paycheck's awesome. How do I manage this weekly paycheck?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been working this graphic design job. It's really cool. I like graphic design. This is unfulfilling graphic design. Well, how do I do my other art? I don't have any of my supplies. I don't have any supplies. I have nothing.
And then you have to build up.
You have to build up.
I ran into a similar realization for myself because I graduated. The whole time I was working for Apple on the phones. And I feel like I can talk about it now. It's great. I always avoided talking about Apple on the podcast because I never wanted to get in trouble because they're such a big company. But I avoid trade secrets and stuff. But so I was working for Apple, and I was working on the phones, and I worked that job during college, and it was great because it was part-time during the school year, and I only had to work one weekend day. So I always had one weekend day that I could fuck off.
Okay.
And then I would work 3 days during the week, and those would be 4-hour shifts, and the weekend day was an 8-hour shift. So I ended up graduating, and I still had that job.
Yeah.
And so I transitioned from the college program to full-time there. They paid me significantly more money, which I thought was both cool and insulting at the same time because I'm like, I'm not doing anything different. Why do I suddenly get so much more money? You guys have been ripping me off while I was in school. This is fucking bullshit, which was hilarious. But either way, I was living at home. I was saving money, but I wasn't going anywhere. I was stuck at home, sitting in a room all day. And my only time to go outside was on my breaks or when I would go to the gym before the shift. Yeah. That would be pretty much it. And that was my only interaction with anybody. None of my friends still lived in the area, or because I actually went home a semester early versus all of the people in my grade.
Yeah.
Everybody was still in college. So I didn't really have a social life. And I looked at this well, this isn't video production. This isn't even where does this go? I'm working remotely. It's pretty hard to build relationships and get promotions and work up through a company that you really aren't with anybody.
Yeah.
And I got a promotion, and that helped, and that made me more money. But I did that for about a year, and I was like, I'm done. And at that point, that was 4 years into working for them. So, that 1 year home alone, and I was with my parents, but I say home alone, meaning feeling like I had nobody else there. I was like, well, I can't keep doing this, but I saved up some money. And my uncle offered me the opportunity to move here. And so that's where I was like, all right, well, let me figure out what I can do in a city somewhere else. Because I need to get out of my home because you don't grow when you're stuck in your hometown.
Yeah.
You got to leave. And I did leave for college, but when you come back, you feel like it went backwards.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, I started taking the class at Second City, and it opened up my world where I'm meeting other creatives. And I was feeling their inspiration, their passion. I was feeding off of their energy. And then I worked at the bar, and the bar sucked. It just made it not fun at all. And I told the story a couple times on the podcast, but eventually when I got back to Apple and I worked at the store, it was different. It was better. It was with people. I worked with coworkers. It was a better energy.
Yeah.
But even that hit a wall where I was like, okay, well, now this is cutting into the creative time. It gave me the financial stability. It got me back on my feet. It allowed me to acquire a lot of the materials that I am now currently using to shoot this. This has been slowly built up. I didn't buy all this shit at once,
Yeah.
But eventually I started scaling up and working up, and I eventually got to a point where I was like, all right, now the job's in the way. So now that I found this new job, this job gives me freedom in a way that I didn't have before. And there will be a point where this job will be in the way, right? When I level this thing up enough where this makes me money and it makes it, there's an incentive structure for me to be like, maybe I don't need to work that job anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know when that'll be. So, probably going to still be a while. But, each time, like when you're working on these things, you level up. But when you come out of college, you don't really know that.
No.
You don't have the context or the understanding of like, oh, this is going to be a slow grind. And, but over time, it gets both easier and harder.
Yeah.
It gets easier because you learn what to do better, but it gets harder because the stakes raise and what you can potentially gain also raises. So it's this weird challenge where you kind of have to have faith in yourself, and you have to have faith in the process and understanding that like there's gonna be shit you don't know, but if you work through them, you will figure them out. And if you find people who know better than you, learn from them. Find those masters and try to learn from them.
Heck yeah, dude. I think that's like what the difference between like what we see college versus like a boomer sees college. Because like the boomer idea is like you leave. It's almost like that. There's a Disney bit with Goofy with it. Like you leave, you get the job, you work your way up, you get to the spot, and you're looking at it, and you say Rosebud, and you die.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
Because one, all of those jobs don't exist in that format anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
The A&D community in like office furniture, for example, like doesn't really exist anymore. Direct to sales now is a thing that a lot of companies have figured out to do. No one's going through, a lot of those dealers like, I sell plastic to people. No one does that shit anymore because they just go direct to the fucking source.
Yeah.
But like now people are leaving college or they're getting degrees in things that they feel passionate about, and no one's telling them how to find and build that passionate project, and that's where I think is fucking crazy. Like in Detroit, for example, I don't know, maybe I'm too far from the mic.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
In Detroit, Quicken Loans, right, built up a big campus on town. And a lot of people I graduated with, whatever their degree was, Quicken Loans didn't give a fuck. It's kind of like Epic Systems in like Wisconsin. Just hire. We will give you come here, work for 2 years, we'll give you yada, yada, yada. All of a sudden, people I graduated with are like, they're like loan certified and shit. They attend some like weekend class, and now they're like loan certified. Now they work for Quicken Loans, and they're working up this corporate structure that's in opposition to their existence and what they trained to do, what they spent $100,000 to do. They're like basically paying off a gambling debt.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I lost playing euchre, or well, you don't gamble in euchre. So I lost playing blackjack, and I owe $100,000 because I thought I was going to be an artist. But you know what? I'm a loan specialist at Quicken Loans. I'm going to pay this loan back, ironically, and then I'm going to work my way up. Oh, damn it. They passed on me again in the promotion. Well, you know what? I'll go somewhere else, and I'll do a project management gig. And it's soul-sucking. And it's not... You shouldn't have to accept mediocre, especially if you had to pay the price for it. And it's one of the reasons I fucking hate Dan Gilbert. Like, I fucking hate Quicken Loans. First of all, is weird tangent. Their predatory loans are the reason why a lot of Detroit houses got fucked. And I'm not the person equipped to talk about this the most, but Detroit's problem isn't its people. Detroit's problem is the property that's owned by certain people. And they want to fuck people because they want money.
Yep.
It's hard for me. I still haven't gone to Little Caesars Arena because it's hard for me to sit there and be like, you guys just left the Joe Louis. You didn't pay all your goddamn bills. You just moved. Yeah. You opened this shit downtown. And downtown Detroit is so fucking cool. It's fun. I'm not going to pretend like I don't go to Comerica and I haven't been to Ford Fieldhouse and benefited and had a good time. But also I look around and I go, damn, there's a lot of displaced people and no one gives a shit. Because to them, they go, well, they didn't do anything with this space. Well, they didn't do anything because they got fucked by predatory loans.
Yeah, because they were set up to fail.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get on your feet when you're being fucked down to your knees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, weird side tangent, but yeah, in that journey is so important, and more there are people who are going through college and they're learning this lesson. They're leaving with degrees that they don't get to use because they don't know how to access it, I think it's so fucking awesome that you're able to set this up, you're able to use that degree to your benefit. I think you remember the Mumblecore, like, directors and stuff? Like, was it Joe Swanberg and The Duplass brothers. I think like Lena Dunham kind of falls into them.
Oh, okay.
But they're all Kent Osborne, who worked as a storyboard artist on Adventure Time. He's in that group too. Greta Gerwig.
Okay.
Tiny Furniture, Nights and Weekends. Those are all those kind of movies. All of those guys, like people who are script writers, and they're damn good writers, filmers, focusing on video. They created their own like format of videos, and they use things like Vimeo and shit to get it out there. And they built careers from it. The Duplass brothers fucking made The League. You know? They've had some damn good shows on HBO. They've built careers, but they built it around a community. And they probably had to go through some fucking shitty-ass growing pains. Wouldn't it be great if the lessons that they had to learn were able to be imparted, and then they were able to have a network of creatives to help grow people?
Yeah.
And you know, greed gets in the way and all that shit, but...
Yeah, it's kind of like masterclass, right? Like to some degree, like having somebody who's really gone through it give you a real rundown on like what you actually are going to need to do to succeed. Yeah,
it's like creative networking isn't a bad idea, but it feels kind of gross because some people use it in a gross way. You know?
That's where it doubles back to the politician thing of like, you got to have the principles. You know what I mean? You got to have the principles. And if you have the principles, then teach people how to play the game.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect.
Absolutely.
That's a perfect way to button this all up. But no, this has been an awesome podcast, Marcus. I'll definitely have you back on next time you launch some big thing. Just let me know. But yeah, this has been awesome. I think people really enjoy this one.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. You know, I'm probably gonna walk home and have my imposter syndrome attack me about what I said. But you know what? It's in the universe now. It's in your hands.
It's in the universe now. We got to just share it. And I talk about the importance of this, but it's important to put it out there. You know, short of you actually you didn't embarrass yourself or anything, but like short of you actually saying something where I'm like, oh, I don't want to harm your reputation because I care about you, you know, like I think it's worth putting your ideas out there. And if somebody wants to fight your ideas, as long as they're acting in good faith and there's a good critique there, then there's something to learn from. Absolutely. That doesn't mean you change your whole worldview, but hey, I mean, you know, take it into consideration and then, you know, move forward and try to grow from it.
Absolutely. Cool.
All right. Awesome. Peace out, everybody.